Mic check, 1 2 1 2. Hello, hello, hello. Not sure if anybody is in the chat yet. Let me take a look. And I think I just dismissed the chat. Pop it back out. I'm gonna test the chat. Looks like it is working. Go ahead and tweet everything out that we are started. Kind of changed my camera setup, so I need to make sure I'm not standing underneath the chat. I used to kind of be over here when I did stuff, so. Ooh, got a few things planned today. Have a little bit of an itinerary, so I'm gonna try to move through things and just tell you guys what we have going on. So first and foremost, full disclaimer on this Formbot V0 kit. It was provided by Formbot for the purpose of producing content and eventually a review. So we did our first unboxing stream last week. I think it was around Memorial Day. And I got everything unboxed, went through all the different contents, and yeah, I was overall generally fairly pleased with everything that is coming with the kit. I know that kits vary in kind of their quality, how close they are to the Voron BOM, and just sourcing. If you've ever tried to self-source one of these, you know that it can be very difficult to get a complete set of parts together with consistency. So all the different manufacturers who are sourcing kits and providing them, they've got a pretty tough job. So there's difference in quality, difference in documentation, and the Formbot is a fairly inexpensive kit. Let me see if I can find my little summary of what they've got going on. So yeah, so this is a $349 starting price kit if you want to switch out your hotend from the generic V6 to a like a Phaetus Dragon. That costs a premium. I think it's like $60 or $70. You can also do a high flow. So this comes with the Kirigami Bed Kit. I said kit, but really it's just the frame, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. It does come with a BTT Pi V1.2, so it comes with the Pi. I'm not aware of a ton of the Voron kits in general right now coming with Pis because they've been so hard to find. The individual retailer might include a Pi for a sort of a premium, but from what I've seen, there's just not a ton of kits coming with Pis because they're so hard to find. The board is an SKR Pico from BTT. As I mentioned, it comes with this CHC V6 hotend. You can upgrade it. It's got a double-sided PEI sheet, which is a pretty nice quality from what I can tell. It's got that textured PEI on there. Looks pretty good. You've got crimped wiring looms. So you've got multiple bags here. They're very well labeled. In general, the kit has been very well labeled. We've got our AC wiring. We've got individual bags for all of our different motors and all that kind of stuff. Moons motors. So we've got our Moons integrated lead screw Z motors, our A and B, and then our little pancake motor for the extruder. These seem to be pretty good quality. Stainless steel rails. I've got one of the rails out. We're going to be going through a process of cleaning them and getting them lubricated. I've never done so before, so this will be a bit of a first for me, but I'll probably hopefully get some coaching from some of the people in chat maybe who built these kits before. Let's see, MIC 6 cast aluminum plate that's been precision ground down. I don't know a whole lot about getting these plates as flat as possible, but looks pretty good so far. Polycarbonate panels. The panels are over there off to the side, but they are polycarbonate and seem to be a pretty good quality. Polycarbonate, I think, is a little bit preferred over acrylic. Acrylic tends to fog and scratch a lot easier and sag a little bit under the heat. So I know a lot of people like to use sometimes ABS for some of the bottom panels, but polycarbonate should work pretty well. Let's see, we've got a 60 watt Vividino heated bed. We'll have to apply that ourselves. Gates belts. I did unravel these and make sure that they had the official Gates emblem on them. What else do we have? Umbilical board and harness. So this is one of the other mods that is kind of not standard to the typical V0, and you need to make sure that you are prepared to work with that guy. It's all using MakerBeam XL extrusion, and I talked about these in my last stream, but it seems to be of decent quality. They're actually doing some post cutting and tapping anodization, so it looks really, really clean. And then a Meanwell 150 watt power supply. So that's kind of the rundown of what is coming in the kit. But after unboxing everything, I've started to get things a little bit organized, and that's kind of what I want to go over in this stream, like how I've organized so far, what I plan to do to organize further, how to prepare everything, especially you know, these rails. That's kind of the biggest thing I'm a little bit worried about, to be honest. So I'm gonna turn my music a little bit down because I can't hear myself. Is anybody in the chat? Let me know how the audio is, if the music is too loud or anything like that. Feel free to blab at me. So let me switch over to my itinerary. So over the parts and features. Oh, a tool I'm going to be using is this guy. This is the LTT screwdriver. So I'm gonna go ahead and let's do a little bit of an unboxing here. So hopefully you guys can see in the overhead pretty well. I've opened this guy just to take a look at it, but I know they've put in a lot of work and done a lot of videos on this, and it seems to be a pretty high quality screwdriver. One thing I like a lot is that the ratcheting action is really, really clean, and it doesn't take a lot of degrees of turn to get the ratchet, so you can screw in really, really light screws, which is, you know, really, really handy. It comes with some bits, but it actually doesn't come with any metric hex bits. Oh, it does have a few metric hex bits, but not enough for what I assume we'll need for the build. So I do have a little set I got off of Amazon. And let me make sure that we have chat up on screen. No, chat isn't up on screen. Let me see if I can fix that real quick. I think my browser source got a little messed up. But yeah, I have these little hex bits. So hopefully in the combination of these two, I'll be able to get get everything assembled really, really well. I do still have my wow stick. It's good for turning in long screws, but I found that the torque on it is a little lacking, especially when you're trying to drive through slightly over-extruded plastic parts, which a lot of my parts have been, but these PIF parts are really, really good. So trying to check out chat over to the side. Looks like we have a few viewers in here. I can't quite see everything. I've got one screen. I'm trying to make sure I can see what's going on. But yeah, I'm really happy with this LTT screwdriver. Seems pretty nice. Like $60 or $70. Kind of a lot for just an individual screwdriver, but all right, let me see what else is on the itinerary. I did pick up this little plastic syringe. I actually already had this, and the plan is I preloaded it with some of this lithium super lube. So I've heard this works fairly well. I know the Voron team typically recommends the EP2, but I was gonna have some problems getting it in. I think some sites like Fabrico offer this stuff like kind of loaded into a syringe, and you can use it. But since I already have some, I figured I'd try it out. And if I need to take the machine apart and re-lube it with some EP2, I can do that down the road. So what's next? I wanted to talk a little bit about the kit and what's included in it and what you need to do in order to make sure that you are kind of prepared to use the kit. So there's two main kind of mods that aren't typical of a V0.2 kit, at least as is in the manual. One of those is the umbilical PCB mod, and the other one is the Kirigami bed mod. So in terms of the Kirigami bed, this just comes with the frame. So there's no printed parts that come with this kit whatsoever. So you have to make arrangements for your own printed parts, printing it for yourself or using PIF or CPIF. So you need to make sure that you get the printed parts for this. And then you also need to make sure that you pull aside some of the specific hardware. So I went through all the hardware and I printed out this ModBot V0 hardware organizer. And it's working out pretty well. You know, I was able to use my label maker and label absolutely everything. So I'm confident that it seems like we have enough screws, but then there were 3 bags of screws that didn't really, they weren't listed on the Voron bomb, and they weren't listed on the Formbot bomb. And it seems like they're mostly kind of associated with some of the mods. So That's something you just have to be aware of when you're working with this kit. It doesn't have particularly great documentation, and so you need to make sure that you just kind of set aside and look for hardware that's going to be a little bit different. Printed parts as well. You can go ahead and look up the Voron umbilical GitHub, and you'll be able to find the STLs and hardware that you need. So if you come in here and go to STLs, if you use PIF, you can specify that you would like these to be printed out, and they should come with your PIF kit. There's some special stuff, it looks like, for V0.2. There's a special version of the tool head mount. So yeah, they're not going to have any documentation on the Formbot site. They don't have any GitHubs or anything that are going to tell you specifically to get these printed out. So I thought it would be pretty kind of sad if you thought you had everything ready to work with the kit, and then you're starting to put stuff together and you just don't have the right STL. So that's one thing. They also list some of that hardware here in their bombs. So somewhere down here they talk about the screws, I believe. M3. M2. Maybe that's on the Kirigami bed. So you can also go to the Kirigami GitHub, and similarly, they will have STLs that you need to print out specifically to get this guy working. So there's some for some of the legacy ones, like the V0 and V0.1, and then you need to look at the V0.2. Just make sure you get all of these printed out. It would really be kind of disappointing if you got into your build or were working along through it and then found out you didn't have the right parts printed out. And that's kind of one of the downsides of the Formbot kit, is there's not a lot of documentation. It's not like any of that is unovercomable. It's not like you're not going to be able to figure it out, but it's not well documented. And hopefully this serves as a little bit of a guide or kind of note that you need to look into these things yourself. Hey Chris, how's it going? Talking about the V0 kit and a lot of the stuff I've done already to get organized and what I'm currently doing. So I went through all the different kind of specs for it, and we were talking about how, since Formbot doesn't have any documentation, you need to make sure that you, especially for these two mods that come with it, go and look up their documentation to make sure you have the right printed parts. Then there's also 3 sets of hardware that aren't called out in the BOM in the listing anywhere, and it looks like most of these 3 are for the mod. So one thing I noted is that there are M2.5 screws, and they're not called out anywhere as to what they are, and it seems like they're for this V6 CHC nozzle. So let me pull the chat. I'm still trying to get things worked out as to where I can have stuff. I've only got one monitor, but this is a very interesting Hotend, and I am kind of covering myself up with the chat here. Let me know how audio levels are, Chris. Hopefully they're not too loud. But this is a V6 CHC, so it's got a ceramic heater core, and this is a kind of typical V6. Let me see if the overhead cam would be better for that. So hopefully you can see a little bit of the difference. Basically, the only thing that's the same here is the kind of heating shroud. Pretty much everything else is completely different. A lot of tiny screws. If there's music, you don't hear it. Let me see if I can figure that out. Let me know how that is. I turned up the music a little bit. It's really weird because in my ear, the music will sound super, super loud, but it seems like for you guys, you can't hear it at all. But yeah, so this is a ceramic core heater. Let me see if I can also zoom in a little bit. So it's got a pretty cool setup here. The way you kind of get things in here is interesting. It's got a bimetal heat break, which is definitely something that a typical V6 does not have. Trying to get stuff to focus is always fun. I know how like Steve and Narrow feel now, trying to get these cameras to focus on what you actually want. You can hear it a little bit. I'll turn it up a little bit more. I think it's really loud in my ear, so I don't know what to do. That's something we're gonna have to work out, I guess. Or I can just not listen to the music. But yeah, it's got this bimetal heat break, and the way you attach it is kind of interesting and unique. It's got set screws, and it's got this little metal insert on the inside, which has two flats ground into it. I don't know if you guys can see that all that well. Got two flats, and the set screws sit into those flats, and then that pushes into the thin kind of stainless steel tubing of the heat break. I hadn't really seen that style before, so it's a pretty interesting setup. Maybe it's pretty typical of other hot ends I haven't used. I think Mandic, really, he did the Cyborg kit, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. The Cyborg kit did come with printed parts. I think that's kind of the biggest benefit that it had, is that if you don't have a way to source parts, if you are in a region where you can't get PIF done or you can't print the parts yourself, you can buy that kit for like $4.99, I think, and it comes with printed parts. So the quality of the parts might differ. It seems like Modbot got really good parts, and Mandic didn't get the best parts, possibly. I can't recall. And I think Greg's Maker Corner also did a review on it, and I think he got pretty good quality parts. So maybe that's something that they're working on, making sure the parts in that kit are good, but it is a good option for somebody if they don't have a way to source parts themselves. But interesting little hot end. I'm going to install it initially just to kind of play with it and see what the qualities are, but then I've got this guy. So I ordered this from MatterHackers, and it is a V0.2 Voron, and I got the full complement of the regular brass nozzles. So these aren't high flow nozzles. They're not obsidian or anything like that, but we do have some options in terms of the nozzle diameter in order to get some different characteristics. So this would be the first time I'm using it, but the plan is to use the stock hot end for a little bit just to test it out, kind of show. The music is too loud now. How was that? Let me know. But yeah, gonna use the Voron, eventually swap it in. The really cool thing about Vorons is that they kind of have these little chassis to hold the hot end, and they're pretty easy to kind of just swap in. You print out whatever version you need, get it mounted, and then just swap it in. I'm not sure if this is going to be as easy as a typical stealth burner to mount and not have to take the whole thing apart, but yeah, hopefully I'll be able to swap hot ends as I see suited. So let's see what else is on my agenda. I talked about the Modbot organizer, talked about the hardware. I went ahead and printed this out of MatterHackers Build Series PLA. They provided some for me to start playing with. So this is kind of their like cream orange colored PLA. I need to get much better about kind of managing cameras and stuff. So I think this orange kind of, hey Thomas, or Tomas, excuse me. How's it going? But I like the way that this turns out and it looks. This is a silky silver PLA that I did all the drawers in. And I think I probably printed too fast and too high at temperatures. And I've heard that you really need to slow down your print speeds and also probably turn down your temps in order to get the silky nature of the filament to really come across. But yeah, so this has all the hardware that we're going to need, easily stored and labeled. So if you're going to build a V0, I recommend you look at the little hardware sorter that ModBot created, because it's kind of perfect. Rather than having to go in and out of bags, dipping your fingers in and pulling out like the number of screws, I find it's going to be a whole lot easier to just have this, tip it over, pull out the number of pieces of hardware you need. So yeah. The next thing I want to talk about is some extras I went ahead and purchased, and that includes a fully new set of fans. So from what I've heard with some of the lower price kits, the fans are something that typically tends to go out pretty quickly, and or they're somewhat loud or non-performant. So I'm going to give them a chance. I'm going to completely install it stock, but I went ahead and ordered from, I think these are from DFH. They're a kind of retailer for a lot of kind of custom parts for Vorons and other kits, but I ordered their complete fan set so that if I do have problems with the fans, I don't have to stop and I can continue going. I also ordered a LDO wiring kit, so for the Kirigami bed mount. So this includes everything you need to wire up a NeoPixel in the front. So my pip parts actually came, pip parts sounds kind of funny to say, but they came with this piece that goes on the front like this, and there's actually a spot for a NeoPixel in there, which is kind of cool. So this kit comes with a NeoPixel, it comes with the wiring, it comes with little daughter boards and Wagos for you to be able to wire things up. This is not a part of the Formbot kit. They only provide you with the mount, which is technically enough. It's a good option compared to the stock bed, which is made up of normally of like several pieces of extrusion. So I think, you know, the fact that they give you this is good. I think they sell this individually also for like $5. If you are building a V0 and want just the frame, then you can pick this up. But yeah, I figured I'll get it built and then I'll put on the LDO kit and get a little bit of extra, you know, bling out of my build. So I think that's it for the extras. I also got some, actually I got some extra belts. So this is some more 1 meter Gates belts, just in case I mess up while I'm putting the belts on. And I also have coming in the mail a set of hardware, so a completely full set of hardware. I ordered that from Sparta 3D, and so that's just in case anything happens to be missing or I strip out screws. I'll just have a fully complete extra set and I don't have to slow down on my build. So that's some of the stuff I picked up just to kind of have some extras of and to enhance the build, but it doesn't typically come with the set. Next I wanted to talk about the extrusions. I've already got these kind of organized and labeled. So if you look through the manual for the V0, then it calls out a bunch of different extrusions like A through J or H, and it calls them out by the number, the lengths, the number of holes in them, and the orientation of the holes. And then it also looks at whether or not the side holes in the profile are actually tapped or not. So this kit, like it seems to be happening with a lot of the kits, all of the profiles are already tapped. So that's not anything that you can use to kind of differentiate things, but you need to make sure that you use the right extrusion on the right part of the frame. Otherwise, you know, you won't have another specific extrusion later on in the build. And I have seen people online that seem to have gotten that mixed up. So you need to take some time and go ahead and get these sorted out. You'll see that some of these have slashes on them. So these are both, any of these can be used as A or B extrusion. And the only difference between an A and a B extrusion in the instructions were the the threaded holes. And so since all of the ones are in this kit are threaded, you can use the kind of A or B interchangeably. I did go ahead and kind of check these in terms of length and use my calipers, and they seem to be fairly accurately cut. I measured from like, I think 199.97, no, 0.997 to 200.003. So there was a variance of like 6/1000ths of a millimeter. So that seemed pretty good. Measuring by hand with calipers is never super accurate, but from what I can tell, all of the extrusions are cut pretty accurately. We'll find out how squarely they cut once we start to put them together. Another set of extrusions that are kind of like cross interchangeable are the C and H extrusions. The only difference between those, again, were whether or not the ends were tapped, but since all the ends are tapped, you can kind of use these interchangeably. So this is a kind of an important step. You want to identify and label all of your extrusions so that you can use them whenever they're specifically called out in the instructions, and make sure that you don't use the wrong extrusion. So I'm going to go ahead and move these off to the side now, since we've already talked about them. And next up, I wanted to talk about printed parts. So I already kind of mentioned, if you pick up this kit, it comes with two non-standard things, so you need to make sure you get the printed parts for those. The first being the Kirigami bed. If you do CPIP, they will ask you whether or not you're doing the Kirigami bed mod, and if you are, they will send you the printed parts. If you're printing these on your own, you need to just make sure that you go download the STLs and get them printed out to the Voron spec. There's a number of pieces. I kind of went ahead and also printed out the pieces in multiple colors, so I can kind of decide, do I want it to be the accent color or do I want it to be the base color? The LDO kit comes with a daughter board and Wagos that you can use to distribute your power. So if you buy that kit, it has its own specific parts, so you need to go to the LDO documentation and print out those parts from there. So you really have to kind of like be hopping between different pieces of documentation. The Voron manual, if you buy a Formbot kit, there's no special documentation, but the Finalizing and some of the other kits, then you need to check their documentation, and yeah, just try to make sure you have the right parts. The umbilical is also a special instance where you have to print out a whole bunch of special umbilical pieces, so just make sure that you have those. It's kind of a downer when you get like 60% through a build and you need to build like one specific part and you don't have the right printed parts. It's probably going to delay you at least half a day, to get some parts printed. Tomash, you'll build it with a direct drive or a Bowden. It's going to be a direct drive, so this is going to use the standard mini stealth burner, which is a direct drive. It's got this tiny little pancake motor. This is a Moon's motor that gets put on the back of it, and so you can have a reverse Bowden tube that comes in the top here, but it'll be direct drive. There are STLs for a Bowden version of this if you really perhaps want to save on weight. A lot of people who like to use these printers to print super fast end up going with the Bowden version of it, so that you can get a little bit of this extra weight off of the XY gantry and put it on the back of the printer. So if you do want to go with a Bowden setup, Voron does make this guy. This is the Mobius M4 extruder that you can print out. All you really need is a stepper, a BMG kit from Bondtech to do the internals, which you can kind of see on the inside there. But yeah, you can go either Bowden or direct drive. I'm going to be going direct drive. I do want this to print fast, but I don't think I'm going to be, kind of min-maxing stuff to the point where the direct drive weight is going to cost me all that much. If I do get to a point where I'm really trying to maximize speed, then I can easily, print out a M4 extruder and switch this over to a Bowden by printing out the other part. So yeah, you can do Bowden or direct drive, and I'm going to do direct drive. Some other printed parts I found that might be helpful are these cable traces. Yeah, if you're not going what's it, 247 printing speeds, where he's just got crazy accelerations and crazy speeds, and the extra weight isn't all that much of a difference. You know, he's done experiments where he's like done carbon fiber extrusions in place of your regular extrusions. I think he's done like titanium and other metals, but yeah, if you're not planning on like absolutely going crazy with your speeds, direct drive is probably fine. These are two little cable kind of chases that basically somebody made a 3D printed version of the cable management stuff that comes in the LDO kit. So these are files that are readily available if you search through the Voron user mods. And basically you'll probably just VHB these onto the back or the side of your case, and it allows you to kind of manage the cables and keep them fairly clean looking, which I appreciate. I always love some cheeky good cable management. So I printed them out in blue on my Prusa, and they are in ABS, although they'll be outside of the heated chamber. So you could probably do PETG or maybe even PLA because they're not really load bearing parts at all. There are some optional tools and jigs that you can print out that I went ahead and printed out. These little guys are specifically made to line up your linear rails and extrusions when you're building the back of your frame. You can see that they got cutouts for the linear rails, so you stick them on top and they perfectly space out your extrusions and linear rails. So when you're building kind of the back frame, all you had to do is measure over and make sure that they're perfectly centered. So that's kind of a nice little shout that I decided to print out. Adam from V3D, Vector 3D, made a bunch of little jigs that you can use to measure things like the height of your pulley teeth or pulleys. So these go on here, and you need to space them out pretty precisely in order to have everything align really well. So there is a jig that comes with your kit or comes with your CPIF parts, or that you can print out, and you can kind of let's see exactly how this works. You can put it on the side like this, but he printed these out as a way to kind of get the spacing correctly and make it a little bit easier to kind of screw things on. So you can see you put this on here like this, you'll put your pulley. Let's try it out. You'll put your pulley on, and I assume use this to line up the top of the pulley like so. And this kind of makes it a little bit easier, I think, to one-handed tighten things on. When you're using the jig that comes with things, I just feel like it's a little, not finicky, but just a little bit harder to do with one hand. So this one, you can kind of apply pressure and hold it pretty steady while you use the other one to get your Loctite set up on your screws. So I appreciate Adam putting these out, and it seems like it's a pretty good kind of little mod to have. So he's got them for both the motor types that you need. So the A motor needs a different height than the B motor because the chain or the belts run on top of each other. He's also got these little guys, which are help you space out the linear rails on your extrusion. So if I pick up some of these linear rails, extrusions, and then put a linear rail on there, you need to have these at a pretty precise kind of length in here. And so these, which if your printer is tuned in pretty well, you should be able to get these printed out pretty precisely. I use my calipers to make sure that the distances were correct. But you can slide these into the rail and just kind of, again, this will be screwed down, apply a bit of pressure and hold it while you go ahead and then screw down all of your other extrusions. So this will kind of be set up like this. These come with the Voron STL parts, so you use these to align things in this orientation. Then you can use the Vector 3D part to push it to precisely 33 millimeters, 37 millimeters, whatever you might need. And then you can kind of just hold them both down with your hands and go ahead and tighten things. So you can use calipers for this, you could use a ruler for this, but in terms of being kind of precise and getting things done effectively, I kind of like the ideas of having these. So I'm going to try them. If they kind of turn out to not work out for me, and I can go back to my calipers. So he's got one for 33, 25, and 38, which are the different gaps that you need for different parts of the build. And I think that's it for terms of the jigs. This jig comes with the kit as well. It helps you kind of sand down the end of the BMG extruder gear to make sure that it will fit correctly inside of the housing. So I think that's it for like kind of printed parts considerations. In terms of organization in general, I've got these plastic bins that I use for a lot of projects, and I've kind of gotten things divided up. So this is obviously jigs and fixtures and stuff. Then in this guy, I've got electronics and such. So I've got those cable raceways. I've got all the stuff for the extruders, so the the umbilical parts. I've got all the mounts for the Raspberry Pis and all that kind of stuff in this bin. So I know when I get to that step of the instructions, I just have to pull out this bin and I'll have everything in there. This one, This one, I've got my Z and bed stuff. So everything that's related to the Z motors and bed, I have in here. I do have some duplicates of a couple of parts that came in CPIF stuff, and I didn't realize it. So I'll be able to kind of, choose between their parts and my parts. They also print out a lot of extra stuff most of the time. So even if you say that you have a Kirigami bed, I think it's just easier for them. They have predefined plates, and they'll just kind of send you more than you need in most cases, is what I've found. I've got a bin for all the motor-based stuff, so kind of our gantry and belt stuff. I've got the AB motor mounts, which I've kind of already somewhat pre-assembled just to kind of keep stuff together. We've got our idler stuff. We've got our X-rail holder, which kind of helps it move along the wide gantry. And so I just want to have everything kind of organized so I don't have to go searching for parts. And it's also helped me make sure that I have all the parts I need. I've got a bin for a lot of frame stuff. So this is part of our feet. These are our other feet. These are the ends of the feet. These are actually bed parts. So I need to move these into the bed bin, which is down here. So whether or not the typical user is going to want to do this much kind of organization, I'm not sure, but it helps me out. It helps me think about the build. I really like to lay things out and have things organized so I know where they are. Hey Zombie. Yes, 0.2. This is the Formbot kit. It is a budget-oriented kit, and I'm trying to call out everything in terms of the unboxing, making sure everything's here. Show people how I'm organizing stuff. I have a particular way I like to go about doing stuff that might not be the same as other people, so I'm just trying to show people what I'm doing. We've got our nut holders for all of our linear rails. If you have something like an LDO kit, these are metal in their kit, which is kind of really nice. They're just metal strips like this, which are pre-drilled and threaded, so all you have to do is stick the bars in and align them, and you can screw directly into them. So with these, you have to preload them with M3 or M2 nuts and kind of stick them in there the same way, and they just kind of hold the nuts in place so you don't have to really finically move them around. I've heard they are good enough when built. Yeah, that's what my understanding is. Formbot provided this kit for review, and I also have an LDO kit from MatterHackers that I'm going to be able to build after this, and then I'll be able to do some comparing and contrast. I think there's, people have different priorities with the kits they buy and the printers they build. For some people, when I say value more than anything else. They want to see the lowest price that they can get, whether it's because they are super budgeted or just super frugal. Some people just have different priorities. I review a lot of different technology, and I often tell people hey, if you can move up a tier by saving up for another 2 months, I often recommend you do that. With competitive consumer products, usually there's an increase in quality and or experience with an increase in price. Not all the time, but a lot of the time there is. But I hear from a lot of people that, you know, when I tell them, if you can save up $200 more and get this graphics card, then you'll have a much better experience. A lot of the times I hear, that's just not possible for me, like where I am and where they are in their life. So I understand that some people can't always, you know, save up another 2 months. Like they've got $400 budgeted and that's what they've got. So I try to, you know, just acknowledge the fact that not everybody's in the same position as me. Hey Kyle, buy once, cry once is a common phrase that you hear through a lot of consumer products. I have a sim racing rig over to the side that I've slowly upgraded over time. And now that I realize how deep I am into the hobby, it, you know, would have made sense to buy once and cry once. But there was also kind of an interesting progression of moving up as my tastes have, you know, grown. A lot of us are starting out with like a $100 or a $150 like Ender 3, and now we're producing, you know, like we're building $600 Voron printers. Generally, I find trying to get the second from the cheapest item is way better than the cheapest item. The diminishing returns diminishing returns are a huge thing, especially in 3D printers. You know, the difference between some high quality $700 printers and a $1,200 printer. A lot of the time it's a lot of like user experience stuff, and the quality prints you get can be pretty close. Yeah, I've got two Ender 3s right now. One of them I'm going to be eventually turning into a switch wire, which should be a fun build after I finish both of these 0.2 kits. I didn't expect both of these to come at the same time. I reached out to Formbot like many months ago, it seems like many moons ago, and they seemed interested, but they didn't know when their kit was going to be like 100% available, and they wanted to get them in the hands of users before sending them out to anybody for review, which I think is pretty you know, understandable. But then MatterHackers got in touch with me and said, hey, we'd like to, you know, help you out with some projects. Do you want to build a Voron? And so they were going to send me out the LDO kit, and then all of a sudden Formbot got back to me and said, hey, the kit is ready and it's on the way. And so it showed up first, so I'm reviewing the Formbot kit first, or building the Formbot kit first, and then I'll switch over to the LDO kit, which is generally considered a higher quality kit, but it also costs more. Hey David, how's it going? And then I've also got a bin full of the no drop nuts. So a weird thing about these Maker XL extrusions, and generally the extrusions that are recommended for these Voron printers, is that they don't support any type of standard T-nut or like hammerhead T-nut that you can put in and twist into place, or standard drop-in nut. So you technically need to preload every single nut that you want to have in this rail before you end up closing it off, because after you close it off, there's almost no way to get those nuts inside of there. And if you just put in a regular M3 nut, it's gonna slide around all the time while you're reorienting the printer. So these no drop nuts, nut holders, do you want to build a Voron? Yeah, it should be required to sing that way. So these nut holders allow you to load in your M3 nut and then slide it into the extrusion, which I'm a little worried that my printer might have over extruded a little bit, and these aren't sliding in that nicely. But basically they make it so that you preload your nut in here, push this in, and it won't slide around all that much. Yeah, so I'm a little worried my no drop nuts aren't going to fit all that well. I printed about 150 of these, so we'll have to see. Different manufacturers do have slightly different profiles for their aluminum extrusion, and some support certain mods like the no drop nuts a little bit better, and then also it's all heavily going to depend on the quality of your printer. So I think that's it in terms of like organization for the printed parts. I kind of overdo things and get things kind of set up. I've done kind of the same thing with all of the mechanical parts and electrical parts. This is all stuff related to the bed and Z-axis. This is all motors and kinematics. This is all kind of hot end electronics and extruder stuff. And then this is just general wiring and cable management stuff. So I've got everything kind of set up in a way where I should be able to find everything and, you know, a place for everything and everything in its place. I did show this earlier. I've got the LPT screwdriver. I just got that in. I also have a water bottle, and I got a desk mat from them as well. So I've heard pretty good things about the screwdriver. The ratcheting action is super, super nice. I hear you can screw in, you know, a lot of times ratcheting screwdrivers, the ratcheting action won't work once if a screw isn't a certain amount set in there. If it's super loose, the ratcheting action doesn't really work. But with this screwdriver, I hear it works really, really well for like lightly threaded screws. It's also got this little grip so you can, you know, kind of easily turn stuff. You can do that kind of action. I don't know if that's coming up on sound or if NVIDIA is kind of filtering that out, but sounds and feels pretty nice. So I guess what's next is getting our linear rails prepared. So depending on where you get your kit, your linear rails can come in various states of readiness. A lot of the times for any kind of metal parts like this that are going to be shipped around the world, possibly on container ships, which are going to sit at port for a real long time, they tend to load them up with the grease that's not meant for them to actually you know, be moved around. It's more to keep them from rusting. So depending on where you get your rails, you might have to clean them. So the Voron team has some videos, Nero has a video out on how to clean these. Excuse me, and I'm just going to go through that process with you guys to get mine prepared. So this one is, I ended up buying a Mega Pro for $40 after watching the LTT release video. Yeah, I held out for probably like 3 months after they released their stuff, and then finally I was like, I'm just going to buy an LTT screwdriver. Support them. They supported me. Linus helped me get into CES the first time I went to CES. I wouldn't have been able to get in. I don't know if I still have that badge or not. So this is kind of cool. Not very many people are gonna have that. So this is my badge from CES 2015. I had just started my YouTube channel. I had like less than 1,000 subscribers, and I didn't qualify to get a press pass or credentials for CES. And I had talked to Linus a few times online and showed him some of my videos, and he thought that they were like pretty good, and he actually helped me get credentials to get into CES. And so I walked around with this, and people saw Linus Media Group, and they like jumped at me, and I was like, oh, I'm not technically, yeah, this badge is a pretty cool keepsake. And I kind of didn't really show it a lot in my videos because I didn't want people kind of bombarding him with, you know, requests, can you help me get into CES and all that kind of stuff. But like, I can't show enough support for LTT after, you know, he helped me with this and some other stuff. And I got to meet Luke and Edsel and the Knicks and Colton and, you know, almost all the guys at a couple of CES events. So they've been really, really nice to me. So the least I can do is buy some of their merchandise and gear, I figured. So yeah, I'm going to keep that forever. But what I have here is just a little like Plano tackle box that I filled the middle channel up with some isopropyl. Got some nice 91%. Yeah, the badges don't change. They do scan you in some places to get into certain parts of it. They scan your badge, but yeah, they literally, let me see what other ones I have. This one is from 2016, and you can probably see that it's not a huge difference. They changed the color of this part down at the bottom, and then yeah, there's like an NFC tag that they use to like check into certain parts of certain experiences. Like you use it to get your lunch and check into the press room and stuff like that. But yeah, you could probably, you know, Scan your batch and then rock the LMG. Ah, I like the way your head's at. Yeah. Like seriously, I walked up to the Razer booth just with my camera and I had my press credentials out and somebody's like across the room just saw Linus Media Group and like darted across the room towards me. And I didn't, you know, I used it appropriately. I didn't misuse my power. I want to say, like, I told them, oh, I'm just kind of walking around and checking out stuff on my own. I'm not shooting for LMG or anything like that, because I didn't want to also get Linus in trouble for having people like, I don't know. It was a weird situation, but it was pretty cool that, you know, like somebody saw me across the room and they got me into like 2 demos for their like VR headset, because I think that they had taken over the OS VR at that time, which was like an open source VR headset. But Computex is crazy. Computex is like CES, but just for kind of consumer, like computer electronics. So where CES is like almost everything, Computex is like hyper, and it's so near the capitals of where Asus, just all those hardware companies are. It's like, it's a much more intense version of CES from what I've like seen and heard. But yeah, let's, I'm going to try to get back to the matter at hand, which is cleaning and lubricating our linear rail. So this is the X rail. It in particular was called out on its packaging for having a specific preload. So I guess this one needs a preload that is lighter or potentially heavier. The other rails don't say what their preload are, but since this one is called out as being different, presumably the X-axis needs a different preload. I would assume that it would need a lighter preload since it's just carrying the tool head, whereas the X and the Y axes kind of carry, well, the Y axis carries the X axis and then the Z axis carries the whole bed. So it's a higher preload, meaning more preload. Okay, good to know. Or it is lighter. Yeah, I don't really know all that much about the specs for preloading linear rails. This is the first kit I'm building that, you know, requires linear rails. So I'm just gonna give these a little bit of an alcohol bath. I wiped it down a little bit before this and tested out, you know, kind of moving it back and forth. And I might have done it a little bit too vigorously because the little rubber stopper that was in it, I kind of bumped into it and it flew somewhere across the room. But these don't feel too bad. They feel pretty good, to be honest. I'm not noticing a whole lot of grease kind of binding them up. I can kind of hear the ball bearings. I don't know if it's gonna show up in the audio for you guys, but they move pretty well and they don't have a ton of kind of shipping grease on them from the factory from what I've seen. So I'm just going to move it around and we'll see if the isopropyl alcohol kind of discolors over time as I clean these, and if it does, then I'll kind of change them out. But I'm splashing out alcohol all over the place. I've heard you don't need to do a ton of cleaning on this to get, you know, stuff out. I've seen some people who soak them overnight, kind of, but I've heard that that's not actually all that necessary. So I can feel that that's made a substantial difference. The balls seem like they're just kind of flowing on the alcohol now, or rolling on the alcohol. So got a paper towel here. I did grab some like shop towels that don't have as much lint to dry stuff off. So hopefully we don't introduce a ton of lint into the carriage. So I'll let that guy dry out and grab another one. That one also has the magnet on it, so I can tell that it's specifically for the X-axis, so I guess that wasn't all that bad of a thing. The Hyman rails on their own. So I did try to self-source a kit originally. Like I used the sourcing guide and went down that whole rabbit hole, and I've got like 5 different spreadsheets online, and I felt like what I was seeing for like a genuine Hyman, which, you know, unless you're ordering from like Misumi or another company like that, who knows how genuine they are, but I thought I was seeing like $30 per rail. I'm not sure if that's like indicative of a lot of stuff, but Let's get the second guy put in here. I would love to go to LTX. They actually have, I don't know if it's like a stipend, but they have something to help creators get to there and then also have like a setup area. But I would love to go to LTX. I didn't really plan for it this year. I think it would require a lot of planning. I need to make sure my passport's up to date, see about flying there. It's across the continent. That's the kind of the biggest thing that's I'm worried about, but these rails do feel pretty good. I've used other printers and mechanics or kinematic systems that have linear rails, and I feel like these feel just as good or better than what I've used in the past. So I just haven't built a kit or printer with linear rails yet. So they don't exactly like fall down. If you hold it that way, they do. So I don't know if that indicates how well they go. No binding. Just felt like they had a little bit of grease in there. I know Barnacles is supposed to be going to LTX. I'm not sure about Jay from Jay's 2 Cents. Pretty consistent from all of these so far. I know in other kits, people typically try to cherry pick a particular rail and use it for the X, and then the next best two use them for the Y or AB, and then for the next best two use them for whatever else they need. But I didn't know Maker Reviews is going to LTX. That's pretty sweet. I met Angus at Maker Faire New York. He was really, really nice. He's pretty quiet into himself, I noticed, which is like, there's always a difference between how somebody is kind of on camera versus how they are in public. But he's very, very nice, but he was just very chilled out and kind of like, you know, I'm here. He wasn't really trying to make himself the center of attention or anything like that. Yeah, Jerry Barnacles, I met him. I was on Tech Talk with him and Jay like a year after they started it. I think it was like episode 28 or something like that. I donated to Jay's fund for him to go to CES that year. And as he had reward packages for different things that you donated for. And so it was like an hour-long, chat with him to talk about whatever you wanted to chat with. And I talked to him, and he was like, "Oh, you have a pretty nice setup. Do you do YouTube?" And I said, "Yeah." And then all of a sudden he was like, "Oh, we don't have a guest for Tech Talk tonight. Do you want to come on?" And I was like, "Yes, that would be pretty sweet." Oh, you helped Jerry? Is he using Polymaker? Yeah, he is using Polymaker, right, for his build? His 2.4 build. So I do want to make sure I kind of clean out the grooves for these. I forgot to do that on the other two. I can see a little bit of discoloration in there, so I'm assuming it's like an orangey grease or something. These feel pretty good so far. I'm gonna go back and make sure I clean out the groove. I don't know if you guys can see that. There's a little bit of darkness there where it's likely some kind of grease and hopefully not rails. These are supposed to be stainless steel. At the very least, steel. I can confirm that. Hello. Trying to see how to say your name. Kuklik? No. Kuki, okay. These rails are Vivindo branded. Vivindo, from what I can tell, is Formbot's sister company and or parent company. So Vivindo is the company who actually technically kind of produces the Trugon, I think it's called, which is like a mass-produced Voron derivative. The bed is also that brand. That's the brand that these are. Vividino. Vivedino? I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Whether there's some kind of white label or they're actually maybe producing them in-house, I'm not sure. Can't quite get that to focus. But they feel pretty decent. I know in early kits, the linear rails that tended to come with them were definitely a point of contention and mistrust amongst the Voron community. But it seems like, you know, with a lot, the same thing with like 3D printing in general and like all the rep parts that you can get now, a lot of the times they're pretty good even when you're paying for a very inexpensive kind of thing. Okay, Cookie. Thanks for clarifying. Is anybody in the chat looking to build their own Voron? I know Zombie has built several, I think. I know you have that trident that you've been building that's like very cool, multicolor. And Chris, you mentioned you're building a, what did you call it last time? You're not a Voron? Is that what you said? But I'm impressed with how these feel. Last rail to get cleaned out. Not a Voron. I like that. NAV. Oh, you just ordered a V0.2. Which kit did you get? I know the LDL is probably the most well-known and popular, I think, but I know a lot of people have built these Formbot kits. Trying to do this without getting alcohol everywhere. And there's a little bit of discoloration, I'd say, in the isopropyl. So something's definitely coming out of these, but it's not like a nasty gloopy mess. On Formbot, okay, so that makes sense to why you're tuning in. Hopefully, I did an unboxing last week, and if you want to tune into that, it'll kind of go over all the parts in pretty good detail. In the beginning of this stream, I also went over kind of a lot of the parts. So far, this kit seems pretty good. It should be able to produce a pretty good printer out of the box. I think compared to an LDO kit, it's extremely light on documentation, as in there is none. You have the Voron manual and you have the documents for the two mods that come with the kit, that being the Kirigami Bed and the umbilical. So you need to make sure that you get the printed parts for both of these printed out, and any kind of extras that you want for the Kirigami Bed. The Kirigami Bed doesn't come with any electronics, and it doesn't come with Wagos. It doesn't come with anything in particular besides this and the hardware you need to mount it to the rails. So if you want something like the LED in the front of it to work, you'd have to purchase something like the LDO kit. So you can separately buy the LDO wiring kit and just use it to kind of upgrade your Formbot if you want to. And this comes with Wagos, the NeoPixel, and the daughter boards and all that kind of stuff, which is kind of cool. So, you know, I guess that's one place that they're saving. They don't have staff like LDO do to produce a ton of documentation. But it seems like for the most part, this is fairly close to the stock builds besides those two mods. So we've got all of these fairly well cleaned. And the next step is to re-lubricate them. I'm gonna move this off to the side. Get another paper towel out. Yeah, Cookie, my general plan is to build this as close to stock as possible initially with the stock Hotend. I'm not sure if you got a Dragon or if you're gonna put in another Hotend, but this is the stock Hotend that comes in it without upgrading, and it's an interesting design. It's a V6 kind of form factor, but it's got the solid mounts up top for like a Dragon. It does use the M2.5 screws to mount them, so if you look through the hardware and you see these M2.5 by 8s and you're not sure what they're for, it seems like they're for mounting the Hotend, because they're not called out anywhere else in the Voron documentation for any M2.5s. All right, so let's take our special X guy, turn him over, and I've got the Super Lube Lithium grease. It's a multi-purpose synthetic grease. It's PTFE, actually not lithium. But I've heard this works fairly well. Yeah, it's a ceramic heater core, but it's a really weird form factor. So it looks, you know, pretty similar to what we've seen out of other ceramic heater cores. I'm not sure if it's going to focus, but in a weird V6 form factor. And the way you kind of attach it is with two little set screws in here, and then there's like a little barrel that pushes up against the bimetal heat break. So it's a V6 kind of in name and somewhat form factor only. The Dragon makes sense. I thought I would go for kind of the lowest price one, because that's what I feel like most people, or a lot of people looking to buy their first Voron would go with. But I've also got a Revo Voron I can pop in. I've got Rapido. I've got a ton of Hotends I can kind of test in this down the road, but the plan is to be somewhat stock at first. But it is a Voron kit, so you can really put in it whatever you want. So I've got this little syringe, and I've got it pre-filled with some of the lithium, the Super Lube. And my plan is to just go on the back of one of these holes, keep it pressed down fairly well, and push in the grease until I notice it start to come out of the little gap with the balls. So this is my first time doing this. We'll see how well it goes. Move that out of the way so you guys can see on this camera. Managing multi-cameras is a challenge in of itself, I've come to find out. So I'm just going to go to that center hole, try to get this pressed up flush, and plunge it in. It's not really going down. I think the plunger's a little seized up. Yeah, there was just some kind of pressure built up. That's going through. And I just applied it until I started to see some of the lubricant coming out of the sides. So hopefully that means that it is sufficiently covering most of the balls inside the carriage. And then now I'm just kind of going back and forth, trying to get it distributed pretty well throughout the balls. And then I'm gonna wipe off the excess. So again, this is my first time doing this, so if anybody has any tips or thinks I might be doing anything wrong, feel free to let me know. I do know a lot of people like, on the Voron team, like the CP2 grease. And you can buy actually those in a kind of loaded syringe from a couple different companies like Fabrico. But I just wanted to kind of use what I had on hand, and I feel like a lot of people already have a lube like this. So it does feel like a little uneven, like some of the balls might have more than others. So I'm gonna also move it all the way down to the end, or near the end, and add a little bit down here too. That feels a lot more even. And then I'll do the same down here. Whoops. So hopefully that's not too much or anything. I can definitely feel it. The sliding feels different. It feels smoother. Maybe not as free as it felt before I put any lube on them. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. I can just feel that the balls feel like they're covered in grease now, if that makes sense. Let me wipe off the excess, and we also need to get all of the extra grease out of the holes where we kind of applied it. I don't know the best way to do that. I'm thinking just take something pointy and try to push the grease out and wipe it off on the paper towel. I know the grease obviously serves the purpose of keeping things lubricated in terms of the ball bearings for a nice flow, but I know it also kind of helps to make sure that the piece doesn't rust. So having a little bit of a coating of grease on the whole thing isn't a bad thing from what I've heard. I can see a fair bit of the grease in the channel now too, which I assume is what you want. Zombie, Chris, or Cookie, if you guys have any advice or think I'm doing things terribly wrong, let me know. So that should be mostly done with this guy. It feels smoother. It's a little less audible in terms of like hearing the balls moving around on there. It sounds like it's less metal on metal, if that makes sense. So hopefully that's pretty good. This is the Z-axis or the X-axis. There's still a little bit of excess grease. 2 little holes. Chris, I think I just got a notification of you tweeting at me. That's basically good. Awesome. So I noticed it doesn't like free fall as much when I do this. Is that a bad thing? Should it be able to just fall down now? Oh, I'm hoping that's good. Now I'm going to move on to the other rails and just rinse and repeat. And I'm actually going to go ahead and turn on recording for this, so I have it for prosperity's sake. Okay, they don't always fall down like that. You've done nicely from what I can tell. Thank you. I've watched a fair amount of Steve and Nero and some other folks build, so I'm trying to follow their example, but you never know. At least I feel like I don't know, not having done it. I'm gonna check out that tweet you sent in a second, Chris. Again, I'm just pushing the grease through until I can see it start to come out of the section with the balls. Greasing the balls. So you're speaking from experience is what you're saying. Yeah, when I was kind of playing with the first one before the stream, I was just kind of doing this back and forth, and one of the little rubber things popped off, flew somewhere behind me. I don't think I'm ever going to get it back, but luckily I had some magnets around, and I've seen Steve use the magnets in order to be able to kind of hold the carriage on, so hopefully it should work well enough for me as well. I guess the main thing is that you want to make sure that every ball has an adequate amount of lubricant on it, so that you don't have as very much metal on metal wearing, right? Some vendors don't include the rubber stoppers. That's dangerous. I know in the Voron documents, they call out, you know, you can use the zip tie in a pinch. Let me get the excess out of the screw holes. So going in from the back like that seems fairly reasonable as a way. I know some people like to try to use, like, if there is a little access port on the side, some people prefer to use that, but it seems like it really varies depending on the manufacturer and model, whether the carriages have that. So this is like thing number one that was a little nerve-wracking for me, thinking about whether or not I was going to do this right, but it's not too difficult. Having folks look over your shoulder is a little helpful. So I've heard people talk about like the balls needing to be paired with the rails and the carriages. Have you guys found that to be true? Like, you can't easily just throw another carriage onto a linear rail, they need to be matched? Or is that like a wives' tale? Is that true for some and not all? I think Modbot said that he had ordered some extra balls just in case he, you know, lost some, and people were telling him in chat that no, you can't just use any balls or carriages on any particular rail. The carriages are matched to the rail and the balls are precision. Okay. So these are all feeling pretty good. I can definitely feel a difference in like the viscosity of this grease compared to the grease that was on it. Carriages are more specific. I guess that makes sense. So 2 down, and our magnets are sticking the rails together. Rail number 3. Rinse and repeat. Kyle, I'm not sure if you're still in the chat, but have you thought about 3D printing conventions at all? Specifically East Coast Rep Festival? That's not going in as well. What am I doing different? was wondering if Kyle, my friend in chat, we went to Murph a while ago. Yeah, I did. Okay, yeah, Murph 2019, I brought some 3D printed racing wheels, and I've still been building wheels. A little worried about grabbing this guy. But this is a replica wheel of an Aston Martin. And I've basically been rebuilding this wheel since 2019, to be honest. Right now, it's actually got, I think these are MJF. If not, they're SLS button inserts on here. The grips are actually 3D printed TPU that I then covered. These button covers on the back are the same SLS material or MJF, I forget which one. And then these are carbon fiber cut. So I've kind of increased the production quality on a lot of the wheels as I've gotten more and more. The funny part is that I'm kind of just building the same wheels, but just building them with better processes and materials, if that makes sense. So the first ones I built were like mostly 3D printed, and now I've kind of started to mix medias a little bit more. Yeah, was that 2019? That's kind of nuts. I think that's what this shirt is from. I'm not sure if you guys can see, but it's Murph 2019 or 2018. Or excuse me, Earth 2018 or 2019. I'm 100% going to Earth. I need to book a hotel. And I just heard about all the hotel controversies for Murph this year, or the one controversy with the hotel going out of business that a lot of people were booked with. I think Nero got hit by that. Go. I get you to go back in? Yeah. That would suck. I mean, that actually happened to me in Earth 2018. And I got there and they just basically double booked my room. So the hotel wasn't closed for health code violations. I got down there and the Motel 8 or whatever it is, the one with the blue lights on it, they had double booked my room and they were just like, sorry. And then I ended up staying with Uncle Jesse. Clayton helped me out because he had a double 2 beds in his room. Next year you have big plans. I'm excited to see what your big plans are. I want to get back to the conventions and see a lot of folks I've been chatting with on Twitter in person. And, you know, the people I've seen at, for over the years at Maker Faire, Murph, Earth. I didn't make it to Rocky Mountain, but I hope to go next year. And then all the people I've met online since then. Rocky Mountain looked like a ton of fun. I was really pleasantly surprised to see how big it looked and how good the turnout seemed. And I know Voron had a huge presence there, but like a lot of 3D printing companies came out, and it's interesting because Murph is like Midwest is like the original, but it's felt like it's grown out like past its venue. And so, but they're trying to maybe keep it true to what it's always been. So they're trying to keep the same venue. But Murph could start to become less popular. It does have that nostalgic feeling of like being the first one. So maybe some people will want to continue to go to it for that specific reason. There was all the controversy that one year. Was it 2019 or 2020 when there were 2 Murphs? Am I mistaken? Wasn't there a year where like the individual organizers decided to both plan their own Murph? And I ended up not going that year, I think kind of specifically for that, because people were like, you shouldn't make people choose which one they want to go to based on, you know, nothing. Like I didn't know who, which one was supposed to be the real one, but I kind of recall that being a thing. Maybe I'm making that up. Yeah, I recall that, and there was going to be one that was going to be at the regular fairgrounds and one that was going to be at like another place, and I don't know, it was weird. It kind of put some people at odds, and it was a little bit of drama that I feel like we don't need in the 3D printing community. I get really frustrated when there's stuff online where people are kind of pitting 3D printing people in the community against each other because some people like a certain type of machine or company and other people's like a different one. Like, I don't know. I feel like some people are just doing that for clout and tweets and replies, and it really doesn't do the community all that much good, or any good at all, to be honest. The community is growing, the industry is growing, but if we kind of let people manipulate us and put us into shelves, it's just like politics and economics and every other field in the world where people benefit from kind of having people pointing at the differences that they have when 90% of us are really, really similar in, the fact that we love this hobby. I think like arguments about what kinematic system is better, is this company providing better services and products than others, are fine. I just specifically saw some tweets where they were like, oh, it's Voron versus Prusa with the, and these people aren't even following. I just thought that was unnecessary. I saw a couple tweets and it didn't feel right to me. Not coming out the sides yet. Yeah, every industry definitely has brand fanboys. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, like that people are really, really kind of have that brand, what do you call it? Not favoritism, but loyalty, I guess, brand loyalty. Toyota. What Toyotas do you have? A Tacoma? I feel like Tacoma is just like a really, really popular truck, and they hold value really, really well. Taco. Isn't the original spelling of Toyota with a D? Did I read that somewhere? Maybe on like a donut video? Like the man's name has a D in it, but they changed it for some reason? A few MR2s. In '86, that's an awesome car to have. An Lexus G6 300. Is the G6 300 the SUV? I'm glad I'm not like misremembering or making things up. I like watching like car documentaries on the history of a particular type of car. GS 300. Okay. Land Cruisers are pretty awesome. Is that the one that they discontinued, but they're bringing it back? I was really looking at Forerunners for a little while. I wanted something with like utility. I hear Toyota engines just run forever. You know, like there was that Toyota truck that had like 1 million miles or something on it, and they bought it back from the owner and gave him a brand new like truck, which is pretty awesome. Yes, you can get the Lexus version, but they're technically discontinued in the US, and thus they created a market of super expensive used cars. As soon as something like that gets discontinued, everybody's going to be like, well, mine's obviously worth a lot of money now. Cars as an investment is a maybe not new, but interesting kind of side hustle people seem to be having now. Where they buy a car specifically for the purpose of like it increasing in value. And I think we were on the last linear rail loop. Go. So I have a Volkswagen GTI currently and a Honda Del Sol, 1997 Honda Del Sol, which I've been driving around for a very long time. I bought it from my coworker, and it was just kind of getting older and much harder to get through inspection here in Virginia. Depending on who you go to, the inspection can be particularly kind of picky on a lot of stuff. I got taken by the same car to 2 different shops, and one was like, oh, that small tiny little crack in your windshield needs to be fixed or replaced, which is like $300. And then you go to a different shop and they don't say anything about it. So it was going to need kind of an almost complete catback exhaust replacement. So I just decided to get a newer vehicle. Florida, yes. Technically my Del Sol, it qualifies for, what do you call it, antique plates? Which you can have, you know, get it in an antique status, and you can only drive it like X number of miles from home and X number of 100 miles a year or something like that. So maybe now that I don't need to use it as my primary vehicle, I could look into that, but okay, all the rails feel pretty good. They got like a nice light coating the PTFE grease across most of the surfaces, so that'll hopefully help protect, I can't speak right now, against any kind of rusting. I might put an extra little coating on them after I get the kind of printer mostly set up. That was honestly a big worry for me, was getting these lubricated, and I don't know, I thought maybe there was some type of chance I could do things wrong and mess them up, but having done it, I think it's much more straightforward than I had worried about. Yeah, there's no inspections. I know you guys allow like much lower percentage tint than we do in Virginia. I do have a fair amount of this PTF grease on all of my fingers. Anything else I should consider before I call these linear rails done, or at least, you know, done for now. It's nice to have some sage folks in the chat to kind of help coach me through it. I'm much more confident with it now. It's not like I saw it and thought it was such a complicated process that like I thought I was gonna mess it up, but I don't know. Sometimes until you do something, you just kind of don't have a feel for how complex it's gonna be. So the X rail has the magnet on it. That's how I'm gonna remember. Otherwise, there's maybe no other finding marks. Oh, no, it is slightly labeled. I can't get the... Oh, yeah, you can see that. Versus this guy doesn't have any of those scratch marks in it. So there is a way to identify the X rails even after you've taken it out of the bag. I'm gonna wash my hands. I will be right back. Alrighty, so I think that is pretty much everything that I had on my agenda of things to try to get done today. And I put my face in front of the chat, or behind the chat again. But yeah, let me switch back over to my little checklist. I wanted to go over the parts and features of the printer. I did that. Talk about tools, including the LTT screwdriver and my little syringe I rigged up. Talked about the Kirigami bed mount and what doesn't come in the kits, the umbilical. Talked about the ModBot screw organizer and how the kit comes with a few extra screws which aren't on the BOM, and you need to sort out what those are for. From what I can tell, the M2 by 2.5 by 8s are for mounting hot ends. I think these flathead M3 by 6s are for mounting the Pi. Somebody said that they were using flathead 3x6s for something in the electronics. I think it was living room workbench. And then the M2 by 4s are to mount Kirigami bed to the Z linear rails. So the typical screws for this would be a different type of M2, but basically the Kirigami is going to mount something like this on the linear rails, and it needs shorter screws in order to be able to do that. So I think I've accounted for all the hardware. From what I can tell, all the hardware is included. Whether the quantities will be enough will be another thing, but I've got another kit coming. Extrusions, I got those organized and labeled. I think I explained fairly well the fact that all of them have drilled and tapped holes in the ends of them, and several of them are kind of I don't know what a good term is. It's like they're there's several sets of extrusions which are basically identical in the kit, which aren't identical in the manual. So you can use them somewhat interchangeable. Interchangeable is a good term for it. So like the C and the H, I found them to be exactly the same in terms of their hole orientation and the fact that all of them are pre-tapped. What else? Printed parts. Actually, yeah, there's one other thing that I've seen people recommend doing for printed parts, and that's mainly Steve from Steve Builds. He recommends taking a look at your printed parts and finding any surfaces which are going to be mating together, like so, and making sure that they can make good flat contact. If you've got a printer, like some of my printers that tend to over extrude on the top layer, then you might find that the surfaces don't mate well, and that can throw off. You need your, especially anything in the belt drive, you want them to be very, very well aligned. So these CPIF parts from the Printed For program are actually really, really good in terms of that. They don't have very much over or under extrusion at all, and the tops of them are actually very, very flat. So I can kind of show the process of what it would look like if you got these two parts and know that they need to mate together, but they look like they're gonna not sandwich together all that well. Then you can take just a little file or some sandpaper and just knock back some of those parts where they're essentially kind of not so flat. You just want to make sure that they can mate together very, very well. This ABS sands extremely well. And yeah, maybe the overhead cam looks good for showing that. Basically, I'm just kind of taking this file and knocking back any areas where it might slightly, some over extrusion might sit a little proud on the part. But honestly, there's not much at all on these parts. CPIF parts are printed extremely well. They're tuned, printers are tuned in really, really well, and they mate up very, very well. And there's like no gap in between the two parts, and that's what you want to see. If you're not seeing that, then you probably want to do a little bit of sanding. So the parts I can think about are these AB motor and belt systems. You're going to be putting a lot of pulley stacks in these, and you just want them to mate up really well and be fairly precise. So check both your A and your B. Here's like the quality of the CPIF parts, and there's not really any over extrusion, maybe just like a tiny bit, but it's enough that when you sandwich them together, it's not going to make very much difference at all. The A and B idlers, which sit on the front of the printer, you want to make sure that those can mate together really, really well. The parts of the X gantry mount that kind of mate together, I think they go together like this, or maybe like that. You just want to make sure that any of those mating surfaces will come together and mate fairly well. I don't think that's the right part. I think it's something like this, the way they go together. So the extrusion will sandwich in between those. So maybe where the extrusion sits on this part, make sure that this is nice and flat, and it'll just help to make sure that you have the best alignment in your motion system as possible. The rest of it I don't think is as crucial. Maybe the extruder assembly, you want to make sure that those can come together and sit nice and flush as well. The tolerances and clearances in here are pretty fine, so a lot of these little like kind of keys on the different parts are meant to squeeze together, and if there's any over extrusion on the top, they won't come together all that well. So you can take a little file and just kind of file those down as well. If they're not mating together all that great, ABS sands really, really well. But these parts, like honestly, I don't think I need to do much, if any, of it. They're just mating together super, super well, and it kind of speaks to the quality of the PIF and CPIF program, that they're really tuning their printers really, really well. I can't get this type of quality off of any of my printers currently. Hopefully once I get this 0.2 and my next 0.2 working, I will be able to produce prints this well. I do have an ender wire kit that, well, not a kit, but just a build that I've been speccing out and a few other kind of Voron printers I want to build. They've got some really cool projects that are from the printers for ants kind of setup of printers, which are like the salad fork, which is basically a Voron Trident but built with these small extrusions. So it's a size down Trident. There's what is the other one? A Micron, I think, is the sized down version of a 2.4. So it's got a floating gantry, but it's in the size of a V0, which is pretty cool. So there's this whole cool ecosystem and sub printers that have kind of come up inside of the Voron system that are really cool and a bit esoteric, but kind of in the best way. And I kind of want to build some of those as well. So this has been how I've been prepping everything. I think we're in a really good position now to be able to build this printer. I've got everything kind of systematically set out. I've got a little side table over there where I've got stuff kind of knolled out and set aside, like all my panels. So yeah, I'm pretty excited. We're gonna be able to proceed with the build. Hopefully I'll be able to get a stream done this week where we start on the frame and getting a lot of these linear rails mounted. I do have a piece of countertop down behind me that I'm gonna be putting up here. You want a nice clean, or rather nice and flat surface that you can build your frame on, so that when you're putting the corners of the extrusion together, you can make sure that they're flat. Your average table isn't that flat, even though it's, you know, visually pretty flat. If you put a straight edge across a lot of it, you'll find that there's often some curves in there, and if you rely on that to put together your frame is likely not going to be square. So the guys from Voron, especially Steve and Nero, typically encourage people to get some type of super flat surface. You can possibly do it on like your kitchen counter. I'm pointing to my kitchen right there, but you guys can't see. That would be a pretty, you know, flat surface in most cases if it's a nice kind of stone masonry type countertop. But otherwise, you can get a cut-off piece of granite or something similar at a lot of kind of renovation places and stone cuttery places. You can ask them. Usually they say go in, offer to pay them for it, and a lot of times they'll just like let you take a cut off or a piece that somebody ordered and never took, that's just sitting on their shelves taking up space. So I did want to check out Chris's tweet and or message. He shared a photo with me. Let me bring that up. On the Twitters. Oh, so he sent me a picture of his printer. I'm not going to show it on stream. I'm not sure if you're still there, Chris, but I wouldn't want to show it off if you didn't want it to be shown yet. Not sure how super secret it might be. Let's go. Are you designing this in Fusion, or are you using some other CAD program? I want to design my own printer from scratch. I think that would be a really cool thing. Like, it's not like necessary in the current ecosystem and kind of scope of things. There's so many cool printers out there I can already build, but I think the challenge of it, trying to find your own unique angle, trying to pull in different aspects of kinematic systems and arrangements of different printers you like, would be a really cool challenge. And honestly, it would just be a good challenge. I'm not sure if that's sort of why you're kind of working on your own printer, Chris. It's just for like, you want the challenge of something. So I open it in a new tab and switch to desktop and move that away so you guys don't see yourselves. Here's Chris's printer. So dual rails on the Z. I assume it's just a cantilever Z bed platform, no kind of Z tilt or anything going on. And then it's Core XY. With a solid frame on the top. So that kind of reminds me of what we're seeing out of the XL, the Prusa XL a little bit, in terms of just kind of the like having a flat frame on the bottom, extrusions coming up. I think they have a lot of like, actually, it might not be the same as a Prusa XL whatsoever. And then is this somewhat of a tensioning system here, where you have it so you can slide the belt out and then tension it that way? Basically, yeah, okay. That is cool. Or were you saying basically you have to wire your building a printer just because you want a challenge and something kind of fun to do? And then this gantry is that a piece of extrusion? Or is it kind of a single piece frame going across the top here? So that's what I like about the idea of like designing your own printers. Like you can do stuff that nobody else is doing, or do stuff that other people are doing, but in your own way. That sounds cool. And just kind of getting into this Voron ecosystem kind of, it scratches an itch to create stuff and build stuff, but like the idea of the ideation of making your own printer like sounds really, really cool and fascinating to me. Let me bring this guy back over so I can see what folks are saying. I need to get things better set up. So I've got my sim rig all the way over there, and I'm using its monitor as kind of like an off-screen thing where I can have OBS and some other stuff. But I need, and then I have a monitor sitting right here that's my primary monitor, but I can't have like chat up and then show other stuff at the same time. So I need to figure out a better way to do that. Also, my chat in this view is not looking good. It should be over here, like. No extrusion, just a 3 or 4 millimeter aluminum plate for the X gantry. Where are you getting your aluminum cut? Because I've been getting a lot of aluminum and other materials cut for my sim stuff, and I've been using Cut Send, which is really, really good. They're fast. They've got a lot of different materials. The one problem I've been having is that a lot of their stuff is kind of imperial, so like 1/4 inch, 16th inch, 1/8 inch, and a lot of the designs I'm either working on myself or printing other people's are typically in metric, so 3 inch or 3 millimeter, 4 millimeter. Oshcut, okay. Osh is an awesome company from what I can see. They're like open source, right? And they have a PCB service, and they have a laser cutting service. PCBWay is starting to do a whole lot. They do CNC, like full milling. Now it seems they do 3D printing. So if you need a giant resin print, which you're not able to do yourself, if you want some of the stuff like the MJF or the SLS laser censored, and they even have some metal SLM type prints now. I use JLC PCB a little bit more because I use them in like a college project, and then I've just continued to use them. So it's not like I think one is better than the other. It's just kind of, you get used to using one company and you use them on and on. But yeah, I use them. I've also gotten a whole bunch of Voron stuff printed. So this ruler came from JLC PCB, and it's by the Voron team. It was designed, I think, by Timit or maybe Hark K. I'm not sure. But it's just like very similar to the DigiKey ruler that you can get at like any of the events that DigiKey goes to. Which the DigiKey honestly has almost too much stuff on it. It's got conversion charts and screw size holes and traces and all that kind of stuff. And it's got more stuff on the other side of it. But the Voron one is a little bit more simple. It has the GPIO for a Raspberry Pi Type 4, which is pretty cool. It's got the trace widths as well. It's got a wire gauge size checker and then a metric screw. Then it's got your VIR for Ohm's law and your power equation. So just a fun thing that somebody on their team decided to put together. I've got 5 of these because you have to order in a minimum quantity of 5. And I've got a F-ton of other PCBs. Where are they at? So I tweeted out some pictures of these. Hold a while back on Twitter. But yeah, look at that. These were organized a little bit better. But we've got some Stealth Burner 1-piece PCBs, some Stealth Burner 2-piece PCBs. We've got the IO expansion board or the Clipper expansion boards, and I'm not going to need this many of them. It's one of those things where, like, honestly, 5 of these cost like $6 and 50 costs $10. So I was like, I guess I'll just get like 50 of a lot of these. These actually have SMT stuff printed on them, or like pick and place, like produced, manufactured. So I only got 5 of these, but I'm not going to need all of them. So maybe I can figure out a way to do some kind of giveaways. I've got 5 of these Voron rulers. So I'm trying to decide if I want to save them for a convention like Murph for Earth and do some giveaways there. Maybe have like a 3D, like a print contest to see who can print the coolest Voron related thing. But yeah, so basically I saw all of these were readily available because Voron is open source, and I just threw like a $100 tip at the Voron team and then downloaded them and had them produced. You can buy most of this except for the ruler on the different sites like Fabrico, DFH, Sparta 3D, KB 3D, and all that kind of stuff. But they actually, I think all of those companies give the Voron team a cut of the profits. But I like soldering stuff. I like, you know, playing with PCBs. So I just decided to order a whole bunch, and I can hopefully figure out a cool way to give them away to people who will actually use them in a build. So if anybody has any ideas about that, if anybody would like any of these and has something cool to show for it, I don't really want to trade for stuff, but definitely willing to get these into hands of some Voron and other builders that that need them. So give me some ideas. But with that said, I think this has been a pretty awesome stream. Thank you for everybody who kind of hopped into stream and chatted with me. Thanks to Chris and Zombie and Cookie for helping me walk through the lubing and cleaning process. It was nice to have somebody there somewhat holding my hand as I did it. I think this is approachable to anybody. You just need a way to apply the lubricant, and there's plenty of videos from Nero and other people out there on how to do it. So don't be scared of this. It's a pretty straightforward, easy process. I've been working on getting everything super organized. I think I'm in a really good spot now. Maybe take some of these tips and apply your own kind of thought and organization to it so that you can just know how to build the printer and have everything. When I've seen other people kind of digging through the box of parts trying to find the one thing they need, I hate that when I do Lego builds or any other type of like build. So to me, it's really important to have stuff like this laid out and organized so that I can move through. It also helps me for creating content and showing stuff on stream. I don't want people sitting here waiting for me while I have to go find a part. And when I'm filming stuff and recording stuff, I want to be able to kind of show it off pretty well. So again, thanks for everybody for tuning in. I will be doing more streams hopefully this week to get everything started up and building the frame. So hopefully you can pop in and say hi and guide me through that part as well. And I will have some videos produced on this whole process towards the end. Thanks again for tuning in. I will see you in the next one. Peace.